Hi, everybody. Today on page 14, we're going to get to talk about something that we talked about all the way at the beginning of the school year. Yes, that's right. We're going to talk about truth. If you remember from the very beginning of the year, we defined truth in three very different categories. If you weren't in my class then, you might want to take a pen and paper out so that way you can write down these categories. Truth is either subjective, objective, or absolute. Now, what is an example of subjective truth? Subjective truth would be to walk outside and say that it is hot. Well, I'm in South Louisiana, and that's kind of always true. But in Indiana, in Alaska, in the North Pole, if you were to walk outside, you might not say that it's hot. That's fair. That is your subjective experience of the outdoors, and that can change depending on what place you're in. It doesn't really matter, or at least it doesn't matter to the world's understanding of what is true, the temperature outside. Uh, Another example is this. I walk outside and I might say that it's hot, but my great grandmother who walks outside might say that it's freezing. Now it's 80 degrees, but because her body is much different than mine, she might have a totally different experience of the same exact weather conditions. So, subjective truth being, yes, it could be hot for me, and I may be saying something that's true, and it could be cold for her, and that may be something that's true. But the fact that it is 90 degrees outside is, well, an objective truth. It is the truth of how the object is functioning, the object here in question being outside. It is obviously 90 degrees. That's just how it works. That's how temperature functions. What is absolute truth? Well, objective truth is the state of being that the thing is in. Another way of thinking about it is an objective truth is that the sun is bright. Wonderful. Yes, of course the sun is bright. That is an objective truth. Now, why is that not an absolute truth? Well, an absolute truth is something that is always true. An objective truth is something that is true. And a subjective truth is a truth that is true according to one's own perspective. Why is the sun not absolutely bright? Well, because there was a time before the sun existed, before the sun was bright, and there will be a time after the sun exists when the sun itself is no longer bright. And that's okay. What is an example of an absolute truth? God is love. There is no such thing as a square circle. Those are necessary absolutes, and are good examples for that. They're things that are unchanging no matter how time may progress. Why does this matter in our conversation regarding today's page, page 14? Because this is what the theologian introduces to the conversation. From the top of your page, you should read, "For me, there's no such thing as a final answer. The free wind of inquiry must always continue to blow through the mind, must it not, trove all things? To travel hopefully is better than to arrive." What's that saying? For me, there is no such thing as a final answer. Woo, whoop-de-doo. For you, there may not be such a thing as a final answer, but that doesn't mean that there isn't a final answer. That doesn't mean that there isn't a right answer. In fact, as they're standing in heaven, there is a definite one final and two right answer. The God whose mountains they're looking upon, right? But he can't think past his own subjective perspective to see what is absolutely true, that there's a God who loves him. And this oftentimes happens with our subjective understandings of reality, is that we may confuse them with what is objectively true or what is absolutely true. Okay? So that's important. If you'd like, I can also upload our PowerPoint on subjective, objective, and absolute truth to Google Classroom. Just let me know if that would be of interest to you, and you can let me know in the comments below. Um, what else should you know from this page? I think probably my favorite analogy. And if you look to the middle of the page, it's a paragraph that starts off with, "You have gone far wrong." The next line is, "Thirst was made for water, inquiry for truth." So there's a right end to these desires that we have. What you now call the free play of inquiry has neither more nor less to do with the ends for which intelligence was given you than masturbation has to do with marriage. Well, that's vulgar. Oh my gosh, what is he saying? Well, he's saying that, yeah, you have a sexual desire, but it's not brought to its fulfillment if you masturbate. It's only oriented towards marriage. In the same way that thirst is only oriented towards the quenching of that thirst in water. You're not going to become more hydrated by drinking salt water. That's not what thirst was for. You're not going to become more hydrated by drinking alcohol. That's not what thirst is for. You're going to become more hydrated by drinking water or a water product. In a similar way, inquiry is made for truth, the actual end of it all, and not to just play around with inquiry for fun. That's what this kind of inquiry that the theologian is talking about means. That's the same thing as an intellectual form, the Spirit is saying, of masturbation, which is simply playing around and not actually doing the real thing that your sexual desire was oriented towards, which is the marital act, which is the beautiful consummation of a love between a married couple. Right? Like that's, again, looking back at the sacrament of marriage, that covenant that we talked about last semester, whose true orientation is only fulfilled in its unitive and procreative aspects, right? Procreative being able to produce children, and unitive being able to unite the couple, right? And anything short of that isn't actually what the desire was made for. In the same way, inquiry for its own sake isn't actually bringing us to the truth, which is the whole point of what intellectual inquiry is for. That's all that I have for this video. Tune in for the next video for your last lecture on today and for the culmination of this conversation.